Hi there, and welcome to Let's Slow Down, a podcast for all of you who feel tired and stressed from this overwhelming world. Here we'll have fun, inspiring conversations about living life on our own terms and explore ways to ease the pace of our modern world, because life really is good when you're relaxed enough to be present for it. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Stolting, and I welcome you to this space where I hope to inspire you to slow down, because life is too short to let it go by in a blur. So take a deep breath, relax, and enjoy the show. Today, I'm so honored to be bringing you my interview with Fernando Llosa to talk about the topic of youth sports yet again. This is a topic that is going to continue to surface on this podcast because it's one that I struggle with so much in my personal life. Learning to balance the extreme commitments of youth sports has been one of the biggest challenges in my parenting journey, which is why I've turned to experts for guidance time and time again. Luis is a co-founder of wholechildsports.com, which emphasizes a more balanced approach to developing young athletes. He founded the Whole Child Sports movement with Kim John Payne and Scott Lancaster, and they all contributed to the book Beyond Winning: Smart Parenting in a Toxic Sports Environment. Both Kim and Scott were also featured on this podcast on episodes 15 and 17, respectively. If you haven't gotten a chance to listen to those yet, I highly recommend. They were really great conversations. So Luis completes the trifecta here today. I'm so grateful to these three men for their dedication to such important work. Luis is a writer, editor, speaker, investigative reporter, and full-time father coach. We had so much fun chatting beforehand that I finally just had to hit record. So hop on into the conversation. I really hope you enjoy it as much as I did.
So we'd love to hear a little summary of your background to help paint a picture of how Whole Child Sports came to be and how you ended up co-authoring two books.
So thank you for having me first. And it's exciting to come on podcasts like this one, because what all of us at Whole Child Sports, Kim, Scott, and myself, want to do is reach more parents, broaden the conversation about what all of us is either subconsciously or consciously, but not audibly talking about, thinking about, which is that something is rotten in the state of youth sports, right? And it has been for a long time. And there are changes, there are improvements that are happening, but not fast enough, because at every moment, any kid can be impacted in a way that's very difficult to come back from, not just emotionally, socially, but also physically, with injuries that last a lifetime. So to back up to how I met the two men, Scott Lancaster and Kim John Payne, and how we put together Whole Child Sports, I was working with Sports Illustrated. I worked there for about 15 years. I did after moving out of research into feature writing and also investigations, covered a lot of the nefarious stuff that goes on, the dark world of youth, of elite sports, steroids investigations, cheating scandals. And early on in my career, the biggest cheating scandal I reported was one about a kid named Danny Almonte, who was pitching for a entirely Hispanic Bronx, New York City baseball team in the Little League World Series in Williamsport, and was winning everything. And a Florida team started to question his age, and then everybody started to question it. But he continued to blow everybody away, strikeouts all the time, winning, getting to the semifinals. And I was in the Dominican Republic investigating Major League Baseball players who I believed had all been lying about their ages and signing multi-million-dollar 10-year contracts based on being 5 years younger than they were, which is a massive impact financially to a major league.
Sure.
When you're signing a contract for $40 million with somebody and they're actually 32, but you think they're 27, wow. I mean, that would change how you formulate the economics of your entire team salary structure. So, not to get too far into the weeds with that, I also had, with my wife, Mary, 5 kids, and the youngest, who is now 17, and then a 20-year-old, a 22-year-old, a 25-year-old, and a 33-year-old. And all of them were playing sports at different times. the older kids, when they were playing, I coached them. I parented them in sports, but I also coached them at various levels, including sort of elite travel, but also fun recreation. So I saw the gamut of what the entire spectrum of what happens, how parents and referees and kids work or don't work with each other, behave or are awful towards each other socially and competitively. And so I'm seeing the elite sports side, and a lot of it is dastardly. Industrial complex, kind of sports industrial complex, money ruling, just trying to squeeze all the money out of parents, poorer kids not getting a chance almost ever to play sports unless they're so talented that you can't not have them on a team. And it's really just because you as a coach with the kids who are well off, including your son, want a very talented, poorer kid to help you win. I mean, it's just very twisted, right? So I saw that in youth sports as I had seen it in elite sports, and wanted to do something about it. Now, I was going on a radio show that was hosted by Scott Lancaster about youth sports on Sirius XM. And at about that time, I'd been on 3 or 4 times already. And I went to a lecture at my children's school, the Rudolf Steiner School in New York City, which is a Waldorf school, meaning a holistic approach to education. Kids don't just learn rote mathematics and history, but they weave this in through storytelling. They're taught sort of a head, heart, and hands approach to education. They're taught through stories. They're taught math early on through fables. They work with their hands. They're taught through knitting, through music, throughout the 12 grades. So it's a different approach. And Kim John Payne, a world-renowned speaker and counselor of parents and kids, and author as well, the author of Simplicity Parenting, was giving a lecture there. So in the back of my mind, I have Scott Lancaster, and what can I do to contribute to this world that I've seen so much of the underbelly of at both the elite and the youth level? And at front of my mind, I'm listening to Kim John Payne from the Waldorf world talk about simplifying, about finding ways for boys and girls to come into their truer selves, and why in our frenetic society, and as you talk about in all your podcasts, with too much too soon, too busy, let's slow it down, why this is impacting our youth so much. And this is even before we factor in social media that magnifies everything. Hearing Kim, I approached him afterwards and I said, I'd love to talk to you further. And we just started to talk. And I told him that I had this friend Scott who was doing this, and I asked him, what do you think about the world of sports? Because I know you're trying to approach parents and people through helping them with their kids. It's kind of like a Trojan horse, right? We want to help individual adults because they have a more of an impact on each other at work and at home. But how do you get to them? Well, you can never tell them you're wrong or don't do it this way, try that way. Advice is a slippery slope.
Right.
But if you help them with their kids, they'll be forever grateful. And sometimes, like the whole Simplicity Parenting world and community that Kim built was as much about simplifying the parents' lives as it was.
Yes.
Right. It's we, the busy parents, who are imposing our insanity upon our own kids. They're reflecting us until they're a lot older and start doing their own thing.
100%. Yeah.
Even then, they're still reflecting us. So this was the idea. Let's get these two guys, Scott, who is like one of the most creative individuals I've ever met in the world of curriculum and outside of the box thinking for different types of training in speed, in agility, in games. And a guy like Kim, who I didn't know at the time, but also has a very deep sports background and games background. He's written books, games kids play, all these different. So they both, in their different worlds, one more mainstream because Scott had worked with the NFL and he had developed youth sports systems for that entire, industry, the football industry. And Kim, and we just decided to sit together and map out what we could bring to raise awareness among parents and coaches about a better way of doing things. And this was 2009, 10, 11. The book came out, I think, in 2013. And we've gotten together ever since continuously as we develop whole child sports. but we've also wondered why things haven't changed that much. And they haven't. Where they have changed is we were talking about concussions. We were talking about hitting too hard in hockey. And there has become a very acute awareness of the damage that can be done, even in soccer, with too much heading at too young an age. And leagues have imposed rules. We were talking way back then about how kids who are 7, 8, 9, 10 shouldn't be using big balls and playing on massive fields with big goals, because it just doesn't fit who they are in that stage of physical development.
Right. Yeah.
But
what Scott was saying, like little kids playing adult games, right? It's not appropriate.
And that's not appropriate for them physically. It's not appropriate for them developmentally.
Right.
And the other thing is, what it becomes is the adultification of youth sports, which is basically we are entertained by our kids. So, and that's what it then becomes. I bring my lawn chair, I bring my beer hidden in my coffee mug, right? And I sit there with my big belly and my loud resonant voice and yell at the 7-year-old girls, get her, Sarah, take her down, don't let her get through, and kind of like these kind of nasty commands that have nothing to do with what's going on in the field, which is the kids are having fun and playing a game. And so we developed a website, wholechildsports.com, and we wrote up an entire sort of approach to youth sports with stages of play. There are 4. It's rather than go deep into them now, people can just go to the website, but different ages when different things are appropriate for you to do with your kids, or for you to have your kids do athletically. And then we have something called the 10 tenets of use of a whole child and a whole youth sports experience. And they're basic ones like specialization. Don't do it. Playing the same sport or a lot of sports all year round. Take a term off, like in the summer. I mean, your kids will naturally play stuff, but don't put them in an organized setting for the summer. Let them just fool around. Creativity. How do kids learn? And is it good for them to be in a command-oriented structure early on in their sport development? It absolutely is not. They need to fool around and figure things out. They need to be playing with friends and have arguments, and parents need to stand aside and let them argue.
Let them work it out.
We'll work it out, because that's where all their negotiating skills
Yes.
and their resilience. I mean, we tend to want our kids, as Kim calls it, to live in this perfect harmonious existence. Well, that's not the way the world is. That's not even what we provide for them at home, though we're not telling everybody how
Exactly.
our family life, right? But
in fact, you're really hurting them, because you are not setting them up for life. Then they go out and there's any sort of adversity, and they don't know what to do. And God forbid you're not there to tell them what to do or hold their hand through it, which is not real life. And they are stuck or drowning in it. And we need to give them these tools young so that they can stand on their own 2 feet, right? That's like our main job as parents. Yeah.
So when a kid like runs home crying because they weren't picked, okay, that's all right. You don't rush over and tell the kids you need to be nicer, or call the other parents and have a meeting.
Exactly.
And have somebody supervise. You let them figure it out, and maybe you give your kid a little advice on, what to do in that situation, or role play with them so they then can master that situation when it comes up in a positive way. But what we instead have is a lot of entitled kids who then become entitled adults, who don't know how to navigate difficulty, challenge, and who are not resilient. Therefore, when things really go wrong, they get deeply depressed and can't handle life, rather than, working through the issues and coming out another side and being able to creatively navigate these problems. So anyway, Kim was a parenting guru and the writer of a killer book, Simplicity Parenting, translated into 20-something, 30-something languages, over 1 million copies sold. And Scott has written several youth sports books as well. And I was experiencing the world of professional sports and also youth sports through my coaching and parenting. And we fused this together, and we wrote a book which oddly enough is selling better now, 10 years later than before.
Is it? Interesting.
We've been on a couple of podcasts, one which resulted in over 50,000 downloads. It's called 1,000 Hours Outside. And it's another mom
Yes.
with 5 kids in Michigan
Yep.
who started interviewing different people about ways to get your kids away from devices and outside. And can we quantify this and make it 1,000 hours a year or more if you can? And voices like yours and hers are what is through the grassroots approach beginning to really shake up the status quo. Now, you told me before we started the podcast about this new system. I don't know how new it is, but this unified sports system in New Jersey. And I don't want to like flip the script and be the interviewer, but can you tell me a bit more about it on your podcast?
I sure can. Actually, I would love to, because I don't think I've talked about it. It's a really refreshing change from what your typical quote unquote high school sports going to look like. And not that there's anything wrong with high school sports, but they're intense. They're very time consuming, very competitive. So my daughter does do some of that, but on the flip side, she also this year tried unified basketball. And what it is it's, I don't know if it's directly affiliated with the Special Olympics, but there might be some correlation there. And it is teams that are made up of, all kids. I think it's considered a varsity sport, and it's special needs students and mainstream students together on the same team, playing together as one. They have some, I think for the basketball, I know they do a different sport each season. For basketball, I think it was like 3 special needs students on the court at one time and 2 mainstream students on. So they play together. Everybody gets a chance, and they play other schools. They have opportunities to be part of a team, which is so special. That is one of the huge benefits, having that camaraderie and, representing your school and being part of something like that. That's priceless, especially for your high school years. So my daughter Ella had just a really great time playing on that team. And, she came home after the coaches meeting about the season, and she's like, this is going to be so fun. It's going to be so fun. And I feel like that word fun has been forgotten a little bit in some of the regular high school sports, because there is just so much pressure that we forget. It's overlooked. Maybe it's just completely disregarded at that point because everything's so competitive. But when I tell you this, it was fun to watch. It was fun to participate in. It was teaching so many great skills, obviously, sportsmanship and camaraderie being at the top, but also athletic skills. And they were getting exercise, and it was great. And you know what? They practiced a couple times a week. They had, a couple games a week. Once games got going, it was very manageable. So you could still have a life. And I'm not saying you got to do a million other things, but there was a little bit of downtime. It wasn't every day. And if you had something real important and you couldn't go to a practice, you just tell the coach and, okay, great. Well, good luck with that test you got to go study for. We'll see you next week. Yeah. And it's really nice. It's really nice. I would love to, I know not every high school has it. I'd love to see it become more of a normal thing in schools, because it's an invaluable resource for the special needs community, but for everybody else too, and working together and just having fun as a kid. Because that to me was what sports were actually about. That's why I wanted my kids to get involved in sports. My husband and I both grew up playing a lot of sports. And I was so excited when, my first child started to get involved. And then I quickly started to think like, oh, this is different. This is different. This isn't how I remember it. And things have just changed so much. And I'm hearing you talk about your 5 kids, and I have 3 kids, and my youngest is only 8. So she's just starting. She did rec basketball this year. That was a lot of fun. She's running rec track. We have a track program in our county, which is great for youth. A lot of counties don't have that. So it's still very manageable, but my son's playing lacrosse right now. That's busy. He's only in 6th grade. Juggling these 3 kids and just the logistics of, it takes a village. I'm sure, having 5 kids, but just the carpools alone, getting everybody where they need to be. Even if my husband is home at that time, which sometimes he's not due to work stuff, there's still three of them. We're still outnumbered. And without fail, it's always everything's like almost at the same time or overlapping on very different faraway fields from each other. So I would love to hear how you and your wife did that with 5 children. And you said you even were coaching at times. Like, I don't even, how did you do that? How'd you do it? How do we do it?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a whirlwind as I recall it, but I remember the busiest time I had. So my daughter would do some skating and some horseback riding. So that was a specific thing you go to and you can sort of figure out the timing for it. Other than that, she did some high school sports, but they were, the high schools take care of that. They drive the kids to the games and you just show up and participate. The craziest, zaniest fall I ever had was I was coaching all 3 of my sons in West Side Soccer League's AYSOSIS soccer system. And I was the head coach of the 3 teams, and the division heads of this massive 4,000 kid program had to get on a conference call together to figure out how to schedule me. I mean, that was like a big thing because these guys are each in charge of 10 to 15 teams, and they're managing for 20 even, and they're managing them for each age group. But in order to coordinate, because they all wanted me to coach a team because they are desperate for people to coach teams. So that what they figured out was that I would have every one of my games that season for one son, my 12-year-old, at 8 a.m., the earliest possible game of the day.
Great.
Saturday.
Great for you.
Right. And at noon, so this was like on the west side of Manhattan, at noon, all the way at Canterfield in Randall's Island, which is, a 30 to 30-minute drive in traffic, or 40-minute, or a bike ride, would be the second game. And then at 4, the last possible slot of the day would be my 10-year-old's game. So the 6-year-old, the 10-year-old, and the 12-year-old. It was interesting because often I have to call the assistant coach and say, can you start the training? Because you have to train an hour beforehand. And I just wasn't making the times when I was stuck in traffic.
Sure.
I also started biking a lot and having my wife take the next kid to the next place so they could start training with the team, and then I'd come and take over.
It's like you pass the baton, right?
Exactly. And I lost, 30 pounds. It was really healthy in a way because I was biking from one place to another with one kid and then back to another. And because the traffic got so crazy that it was better to be on a bike. So logistically, it was a nightmare, but I had help from assistant coaches, from my wife who was getting our kids to the practices on time. And then I would coach, and then that night I would just die on the couch.
And that was supposed to be your day off, right?
That's
that's Saturday.
We would watch a movie and just
Yep.
never see more than the first 5 scenes. But it was a labor of love. And at that point, I had seen enough questionable parent coaching that I really wanted to be in the driver's seat with my kids. And it wasn't until my older kids were 14 and 15 that I both realized that it would be better for them to also be coached by others, and that technically some other coaches just knew more about certain things and they could learn from them in a different way. And that it was time to start letting go. And because I had, several kids, I was able to let go with one, but stay happily involved with the second and the third, but you need help from other parents. You need help from assistant coaches, other coaches, the league to manage this kind of thing. And from your spouse, of course, because it's a serious commitment. The point at which it gets crazy and everybody's playing an elite sport here or there and nobody has time for each other, which we wrote about in certain scenes in the book, is when you really have to say, hold on a second. Either we're taking the entire summer off and being a family, during our vacations, or we're going to lose this specialness, which is the inner family circle. And so one steps back. And also, I mean, there are many reasons to step back. You will injure your kids. They will become damaged. ACL tears, Tommy John surgery on 13, 15-year-olds. If that is happening to your kid, I'm sorry, but you need to immediately stop what you're doing. And for the next kid, be really wary, because blaming doesn't get us anywhere, but you are the steward, the shepherd, the guide for your kids' sport experience. And it is on you not to get caught up in the craziness that everybody else seems to be exhibiting around you. That's why I love this unified sports program that you spoke of, because it is doing so many different things.
To me, it's checking all the boxes. It really is for what high school sports should be doing.
Yeah, which is broader participation and more dynamic social interaction at all different levels, which, by the way, something like that is literally going to help prevent bullying and other social ills, because you can't be nasty to the special education kid in your class when you just finished last night playing a different school with him on a team and helping him score or working with her. It's just not as human beings, we can't do this. The other thing I was thinking about with that is like mentorship. And when your kid is hyper aggressive and very like successful, perhaps, maybe not, but in a sport, and therefore incredibly annoyed when everybody else doesn't score on an easy shot, or why don't you make a layup, and very hypercritical of other kids, there is one foolproof way to soften that kid's position on success, performance in life, and create in them, help nurture in them what already is there, which is human compassion. And the way to do it is to put them in charge of younger kids from a younger team. And this is what I had my whole team do this for my middle son. There was something I heard about that in AYSO soccer, there was a special needs group that had an opportunity to play for 2 or 3 hours every Saturday morning. And I said to the head of the league, the commissioner, I'd like my whole team to come and work with those kids. And they did. And so that's what happens. You take a kid who is impatient and really good and doesn't understand why everybody or just annoyed that everybody else isn't as good as them.
Right.
And you put him in charge of a kid 3 or 4 years younger who isn't physically capable of doing some of the moves that this kid thinks everybody should be able to do. And when the kid starts being cruel or pushy with that little kid, the little kid starts to cry and runs to their parents. Or if it's a special needs situation, you can't do that with somebody who has those kinds of difficulties. So you start to self-correct. You start, because the kid who's crying, who is 3 years younger than you, and run to their mom, and the mom says, what's wrong? Well, I don't like him. Why don't you like him? Because he's mean. And your mom's looking at the little kid now, the kid who's like 12, let's say, and saying, what's going on? Were you mean to my kid? No, I was just trying to show him how to do it and you couldn't do it. Well, how about we work this way a little differently?
How about we show them this way instead?
And how about we take a step back and realize that they don't know as much as me? So now I'm starting to develop a little bit of compassion and understanding that there's a process. I'm also teaching the actual activity, so I'm learning it better myself. For the individual kid, there is so much to learn.
Yeah.
When they are put in a mentoring situation. And for the kid who's being mentored, they're also being modeled a different way of being with them, which hopefully they will pass on to younger kids.
Yep.
It becomes an effective way socially for an entire league, an entire township to work with each other. And there's so many valuable, lessons learned. It just doesn't happen enough. And so we've talked about different things, there in Beyond Winning, there are various different things that we talk about. The power of play is one. The fact that kids should play freely in an unstructured environment with very little, just sort of like basic background supervision from parents in order to become more creative and more self-aware and resilient in their own personal development. The power of play is critical. So I talked to Harvard science professors and to behavioral psychologists about this. If kids are not playing freely enough at the ages of 8, 10, 12 with their peers, then when they come, even if they're an A student arriving in Harvard, they're going to be unable to work flexibly in an environment and think outside the box creatively to handle anything but, a question and answer system of education. So you're robbing them of an opportunity to be more dynamic and resilient, and then put them in the real world where, your job might change every 3 years, and they won't be able to handle it. So they're like A students, they're fantastic, they're at Harvard for God's sake, and yet, as one Harvard psychologist told me, they're acting like they're in preschool emotionally.
Wow.
So that's a disservice.
And that was probably before COVID, right?
Yes, all of this is before COVID.
Yeah. So God only knows now. I mean,
yeah. So I mean, there are so many ways in which sports can be positive socially, positive emotionally. I'm not even touching the whole world of the gender issue.
mm-hmm.
What Title IX has
Mm-hmm.
done for the way our society functions. I mean, people, and rightly so, many women will say not enough has happened. It's too slow. You know, so much more can happen. But if we do take a pause and a deep breath and look at the landscape, it is a lot more equal than it used to be. And comparatively to many other cultures and many other countries, this here and in Canada is a place where women have so much more opportunity and rights and can participate. And a lot of that I trace back to Title IX and youth sports. And it's not just me. I've been interviewing for some other work I'm doing, heads of NGOs and of different kinds of soccer and other sport organizations. And what I'm told is that, let's just talk about women who are in positions of massive authority in big corporations and C-suite situations. This is a stat that was remarkable to me, and I hope I'm not misquoting it, but 90 or 95% of the women in top companies in America played college sports.
Interesting.
So what does that tell you about the confidence that women, the confidence, the teamwork, the understanding of themselves as not simply the support structure for men, or the nurturing for their brothers or their sister or their you know, whatever. Just, and this is a quote from a top former soccer, both professional and college soccer player. When we work with women in our organization in other countries, they realize that their bodies are theirs, and that they have a value, implicit a value that has nothing to do with what they can do for men. And this is so important, that my body isn't a vehicle for somebody else,
Right.
and for
Right.
bearing children and for all that. My body is mine, and I can do something physical with it that's rewarding, is healthy, and that helps me make friends and grow into leadership, understanding of leadership. And so
Yes.
the organization that I'm talking about, Soccer Without Borders, is doing amazing stuff in Nicaragua and in other parts of the world, in communities where they go in and set up a women's soccer program, right?
Love it.
Just women. And all the guys are like, what about us?
They're scratching their heads. Yeah, where's
whatever.
mine?
And these women are becoming leaders, they're becoming teachers, they're becoming mentors, and they're also encouraged to work very hard in the academics in order to continue to participate in the sports that they're doing. So all of this has happened because at some point, someone realized that it was unfair for all the money in college sports to be going to just guys and their sports. So all of what I'm just saying is simply to point out the power of sport, the power of youth sports, the positive nature. It can be part of an entire society's change, improvement, opening of possibilities, or it isn't. And so on the other side of that, what can happen in sports, which led Kim John Payne and me to this idea of writing a book on bullying. You know, Kim had been working with social inclusion and bullying issues for his whole 35-year career as a consultant. And I had seen it and been interested in it and read about it, but we were seeing it in sports. So chapter 5 of Beyond Winning, our youth sports book, is titled How to Avoid Creating Entitlement Monsters. Because in youth sports, and this has, like with the gender issue and Title IX, massive societal implications at all age groups. Because if young boys and girls, but let's focus on the boys right now, are wearing their uniform at school, considered cool, allowed to skip classes, helped with their grades in ways that other people aren't, told that they're superstars, and develop a way of playing sports which is all about winning, all about results, and not about, sportsmanship and connecting with kids
Right.
from other towns. It's all about the result, and you kill each other until you get it. What you get is entitlement monsters. And at the far end of that spectrum is, and Kim said this, and we quoted him in the book, is genocide. When you have dehumanized another group, and that could be the neighboring township's volleyball team or whatever, but you dehumanize it to the point where you don't mind if you hurt them, and you take that 15 to 20 steps down that side of the spectrum, then you have societies wiping each other out.
Yeah.
And so walking that back, what you want is to develop healthy sportsmanship and compassion, and that is not what we were seeing. And so in our book on bullying, which is 4 chapters of advice for parents and then 10 stories, 2 or 3 of the stories involve sports as a component, as an arena in which bullying is happening, or a way in which kids can connect with each other to work out how to solve bullying problems or social exclusion or marginalization problems. So, I mean, the importance of youth sports goes well beyond me and my potential scholarship, which so few kids get anyway.
Right.
And me and my high school and my popularity. And as you were saying earlier with this issue of the problem with high school sports is that on the whole, it's an elite, stratified, exclusive little club. So if you have a school of 1,000 kids in high school and 250 in each class, to make it simple, and you have 14 spots on a basketball team, and that's probably too many, then who's going to get to play basketball? And who's going to get to have a healthy, friendly competition with other teams? Almost nobody.
Yeah.
And they're going to be idealized, and they're going to strut around, and they're going to perhaps bully and push around other kids who are less socially inclined, because you don't have a unified sports program where they're intermingling a lot. And then you're going to have kids at the far side of that continuum. The dehumanization goes to the point where if the kid who's the target is in any way naturally mentally a little unstable or troubled, or even if they're not, they can be pushed to a situation where they pick up a gun and start shooting people. All of these seem to me like vengeance stories.
Yeah.
You have a 24-year-old going back to the preschool they went to. What is going on there?
They're carrying something from their past, right?
Right. And so with respect to women and opportunities, youth sports has been incredibly positive in the past 20 years or so, 25 years in this country. With respect to bullying and creating social problems, if sports are taught, administered incorrectly, you have these other problems. I mean, I've interviewed superintendents of schools, and one of them who really impressed me, who had, I won't get deep into his story, but he had inadvertently bullied a kid who he was coaching on a football team. And later on, that kid committed suicide. And it wasn't a direct causal link between the coach bullying the kid and the kid killing himself. But what he internalized, the coach was, and he was also the assistant principal of the high school where the kid was that I was so deeply into winning games and coaching and everything working, that when I kicked the kid off the team, I didn't actually know what was going on in his life. And I could have been a positive educator and not just a coach in that situation. Mm-hmm. And even if I still had to, because of the example of it, kick him off the team, I could have helped him in his situation. And I should have, because it's my responsibility to care about the human beings who are in my purview. But rather than leave it at that, he started looking for ways to integrate socially the other athletes and the kids who kept coming every year into his school. And so one of the things he did, and he did it subtly and carefully so it wasn't a thing, was in the middle school, he would make sure that on 1 or 2 days a week in the cafeteria, his athletes, because he has control over the athletes, because he's also the athletic director as well as assistant principal, would mingle with every type of student. So they weren't allowed to all sit in one corner and make fun of the whole cafeteria because they're superstar athletes and they're better looking and they're this or that, or they're, you know, they're studs. Both boys and girls, they were tasked with having a social responsibility for the new kids, the awkward kids. So once you give a young person responsibility and you monitor them to a certain degree, coming in close when it's needed and backing up and letting them do their thing when it's best to be hands off, wonderful things can happen, and they can change the whole fabric of a school community. The last story in our book, Darpan's story, in Emotionally Resilient Tweens and Teens, is about such a kid who is bullied and is picked on as a kid and is awkward and has a bit of dyslexia. So he has a bunch of stuff working against him in the can I fit in easily. He's also from India. And so the food he eats smells different. And so all this stuff happens, but he's compassionate and interested in the social interaction. And he learns all these tricks and he applies them to help kids. And another kid who is a jock sees him do it. And it's actually for his little brother, the jock's little brother. So the kid is interested, and then they form a social inclusion program in their high school. And the teachers love it and support it and help structure it. And over the course of a few years, the entire social structure of the school changes.
Wow.
So hundreds and
Powerful.
hundreds of kids. And even some of the teachers change because it teaches us all through modeling, right? So I just wanted to tie that in because we tend to isolate bullying as a problem here, and, you know, opportunity among gender, equal opportunity among gender over there, and parenting in youth sports here, but it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
At the extreme negative, if we don't work through these social issues early on, we'll get somebody like Putin, who is right now the example of the most dangerous bully in the world.
Yeah.
There have been other examples, obviously, but that ability to dehumanize an entire other country and roll through and try to destroy them while threatening everybody else, if you help them, I'll blow you up, is basically a little child.
Yeah. Yep.
Total ass.
Yep.
Not being corrected. You know, absolute unchecked power. And we all are human, and we all have the potential to do some pretty nasty stuff or some pretty compassionate, wonderful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And as parents in sports and as coaches, we have a responsibility to create conditions which will help our kids grow. One of the top coaches in the Florida Catholic school system at St. Andrews told me, listen, I'm an educator first and a coach second. So I really have to always remind myself when I want to win games, when I want to do this or that as the athletic director and as the coach of the star basketball team, that it's more important that I educate than that I coach and win. And that's basically what Kim Scott and I have been trying to promote. It's great common sense, but first of all, common sense goes out the window the minute you're cheering your kid on and you want to win.
So true.
Right? And you've spent all this money and they better try harder. I mean, we just don't know what's going on in our kids' heads. And so if we drive 4 hours to a game with them and they don't perform well and we're pissed at them, okay, I mean, to some degree, hey, try it, make sure you try. But we haven't even stopped to ask. Maybe they have a twinge in their calf and that's why they weren't. So we're yelling at our kid on the way back. I drove 4.5 hours and spent $35 in tolls and $65 in gas, and you don't even try, and you let that guy get right by you and score.
I've been there. Yep.
Well, yeah, okay. And then they get out and they walk to the garage, and you look at them and they're limping, and you're like, oh, maybe that's why they weren't quote unquote trying. So I just projected a whole bunch of my own baggage and stuff onto my kids' performance when it wasn't even relevant to the situation that they were experiencing.
Yeah. And I think that's the slowing down piece that I'm trying to highlight. Like, if we slow down enough to be a little bit more present, because we are all so caught up in everything, in all of it. And, you know, as much as like this is such a passion of mine and I'm working on it personally so much and I'm trying to talk about it, But when I step out that door and I'm out in the world, like it is very easy. You're bombarded from every side. It's very
Oh
easy
yeah.
to get caught right back up in it, even though I know better and it is common sense and I believe it, all of it, 100%. We can all still get caught up in it. So I think really trying to focus on that big picture. And remember, I think most of us want to raise our kids to be good people. That's got to be first and foremost. And you know what? I think if you do that, everything else will fall into place.
Yes.
Everything else will fall into place. So sometimes we get the priorities a little skewed. And, like you're saying, we do. And I've been there. I've been that parent like, oh, what did we just do? We just wasted our whole weekend. What is happening here? We forget about the big picture. And then we're not getting the benefits that can be there from these sports. And, I was thinking back, this is going back a little bit, but what you were talking about with the free play and how much our kids get out of that, right? Just being creative. One example, my son's, he's in 6th grade, he's playing lacrosse right now. They have practice almost every day. They're off from school tomorrow and he doesn't have practice. And he and one of his buddies, they are all set. The creek downtown just got stocked with trout and they can't wait to ride their bikes. And I'm trying to picture them riding their bikes with their fishing poles and their bait. Like my older daughter's like, how are they going to do that? So I don't know, but I'm going to let them figure it out. He cannot wait to just go play in the creek and fish, which I'm so happy for him. And they need those moments. They need the moments where we're not there telling them exactly how to do something, and they need some independence. And I know some parents don't like to let their kids ride their bikes around town, but they're good kids. They know how to be safe on the road. They know what to do. They're going to go have a great day. And sometimes I worry that by being in sports, there are so many benefits and my kids love sports and we have reaped so many positives from them. But, are they missing experiences like that? Because they have to take advantage of this one day that they happen to have off,
And the fact is they are missing opportunities and we have to create them for them.
Yeah.
We cannot take every vacation as a place to go to, a time to go to a tournament.
Right.
At Disney or at, this other sports complex.
Yep.
We need to script that's a positive way to script a life. We're over scripting it in some ways, but the one where we go to a beach and you sit and read your book after all the kids help prepare the sandwiches and you're just chilling, mom is chilling and dad is just walking around or asleep and the kids are interacting with other kids and digging and there's no, maybe they pull a ball out to just football, which they don't even play, to throw around, or maybe they don't. And then you guys all walk over to the reserve and look at, different kinds of birds. And we have to make sure that happens.
Yep.
Those 1,000 hours outside that are not with nature and connection to the world and not about cooking up pressure and winning.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things in the Power of Play chapter and Beyond Winning, I interviewed, speaking of lacrosse, Jenny Levy, who's now won 3 national titles as in Division I college lacrosse for the University of North Carolina. She's a fantastic social coach, one of the best in the world, I think, on top of being just a great lacrosse player formerly and a great coach as well. What she told me when I was asking her about creativity and how to coach recruits is that she said, when they come to me, Luis, they're like overbred dogs. I thought to myself, wow, what a great quote. And is she sure she wants me to use that? But she was happy to. What it is that from the age of 5 or 6, these kids have been in command-oriented sports settings, playing only one sport, usually lacrosse, because their parents want them to get that scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it for over a decade. And when they arrive to play on her team, one of the top in the country, as one of the, as top recruits, literally the best in the world at what they do, they haven't learned how to play creatively because they've been told what to do at every turn. And it's all about technique and it's all about the drills.
They're like little robots.
Basically, she said to them, hey guys, they were playing on a field. It was an impromptu. It wasn't a practice. She was just walking by. And these were some of the new recruits. And hey, coach, hey, girls, hey, we're just fooling around. Yeah, well, show me some tricks that you guys know. And they were like, what do you mean? Should we do an in and out drill? Should we run, overlap? No. Just show me what fun stuff that you learned. And they were not able to do anything. So what she did was she hired one of the most creative stick handlers in who had played on the US Olympic team as an assistant coach for other reasons too, but mainly so they could she could teach them how to do fun and cool and weird tricks with their sticks so that they could get out of this, cookie cutter way of, and the other thing that she does is so in the middle of practice, she'll add a third goal or turn one of the goals around. You know how lacrosse is, you're behind the goal. Imagine if now that goal is facing you when you're behind it.
I love it.
So, and then, so you're used to the hard ball and how it works. Let's put a wiffle ball in there. Let's put a tennis ball in there. Now play. And so suddenly you're figuring things out and you're adapting positionally. You're adapting because of the weight of the ball.
You are 100% going to get better from that practice.
Yes, absolutely. And that is basically what we have to do with all of youth sports across the board.
And the kids would love that. Younger kids would be like, this is so funny. Like, he switched the goal around. They would love it.
They love it. And so one of the things that I do when I coach soccer is, because soccer is a sport in which little kids are very sort of ego self-involved, and they dribble and they look up once in a while. If you want to teach kids how to pass and work as a team, you can do it with certain soccer drills, but you can also say, okay, today the Frisbee is going to be a soccer ball, and you're not allowed to take more than 3 steps. So kid take 3 steps and then he passes it. But the kid who's running is allowed to run as much as he wants. And since you want to advance and go across the field, you learn to throw it, and a kid runs onto the ball, which is what a lead pass is in soccer. And they're having fun because it's soccer practice, but we have a Frisbee or a tennis ball or whatever that we're throwing to each other, but they're also learning positional and key movements in the sport. Or, for example, with basketball. So if you have one kid who's like the star, and then other kids, and then one kid who is not that good at all and never gets to shoot, then you can restructure things. If Johnny, who we know is not the best player on the team, if he scores, that's worth 2 points. If our leading scorer all the time, Jose scores, it's only worth half a point. The rest of you is a point. So now Jose, who just used to just dribble and shoot, and everybody passes Jose because he could score, now he's only worth half a point when he scores. So they start passing to the other kids. They start, or if you're playing with guys and girls and the guys are showing off and the girls, you just say, for now, just for fun, if a girl scores, it's worth 3 points. And if a guy scores, it's worth 1. Suddenly the guys are going to start passing. The selfish guys who will only, want to show off and win. They now have to be part of a social structure. And so all these kinds of things, there's so many ways to creatively change how kids learn in youth sports. For example, if you're learning volleyball is a tricky sport for guys and girls because you have to learn lateral movement, and it's hard to learn that. And some people don't learn it even when they're playing high school volleyball. So what do? You throw a sheet on the net so they can't see where the ball's coming from the opponent. And then you put them in the middle and you throw the ball anywhere and you say you can only move laterally. Now they really start to figure out how to move. And they are doing it with no, preconceived notion that they can't turn and run. They have to run laterally to figure out where the ball's coming. That helps them learn that type of movement for that sport. So in every sport, there's so many creative ways to do things socially, for specific drills, developmentally for each sport. And the only way we're going to do this is if we talk to each other as coaches and share and stop being so fiefdom-like. Like, I'm not going to tell you because I'm going to play against you next week and we want to beat you. I have so much respect for a coach when they're winning 6-0. And I was playing a coach once in a tournament. They were winning 6 or 7-0. And suddenly our team was playing better and I couldn't figure it out because this team was way better than our team. Then I looked and I realized he had taken 2 of his players off the field. He'd done it without even telling me, totally subtly. So now it was 11-9 and we were having a better go at it. And we even scored a goal. It ended up being 9-1, but we scored and our little kids went nuts because they scored. And I didn't tell them. They didn't need to know that he had subtly just withdrawn a player or 2. Nor did his kids brag about how, the only reason because he had told them, hey, we need to chill. We're a better team.
They're being coached by a person like that. So they're getting the right message.
So, and then on the opposite side of that, I once coached another coach on a team and they were a better team. And one of the kids started juggling in the middle of the game because they were dominant. And I was like, are you kidding me? And I asked him, why is one of your players juggling? I mean, that's just that's just inappropriate.
Yeah.
And it's hot dogging it. How do you permit that? And he looked at me and he said, it's my son. And I said, oh, well, can you tell him to stop doing that? And he said, you're right. It's not appropriate. And he pulled the son off. But I mean, I shouldn't have had to even ask him.
No.
He should have already pulled his son off, because that's what we're there for. We're educators, not coaches. In certain situations, winning is important. In most, it isn't. And even in the situations where you're trying to win a state title, it's not worth somebody being injured for the rest of their life.
No.
It's a game.
It's a game. It's a game, and it's supposed to be for fun.
And that's, I was going to say, those 3 letters, fun. I mean, it's the key to everything. So much can be packed into that. So much learning, mentoring, enjoying, changing the whole society, having people get opportunities that didn't before, like special needs kids, having hardened, competitive, hyper-competitive, hyper-controlling kids learn to work with a special needs person, and therefore that's not a methodology that works all the time, to be bossy and and annoyed at other people's.
And what a skill to set you up in life, right? Just to take you to the next level. You'll be better prepared for other things to come in your future.
Exactly.
And you're helping somebody else while you're learning those skills. So even better, right? I mean, that is the point.
That is the point.
Be good humans.
But I want to thank you for having me on, and I wish you well in your efforts to slow us all down.
Thank you, Luis. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And I know so many people are going to get a lot out of this conversation, because there's a lot of really tired sports parents listening to this. So I'm hoping they can take a few things that might help make things a little bit more manageable, myself included. A lot of this conversation is asking for a friend. I'm speaking from personal experience here.
Yeah.
And
take a weekend off, right? No sports this weekend. We're gonna, wade into a pond. We're gonna hike out,
go fishing.
Go fish.
Yeah, those things are important, right? That's what really shapes our kids' childhood, and it shapes our families. That was the other thing before we go. I was going to say, sometimes I feel like sports can really negatively affect the family unit, and that's why I'm so glad you were saying, like, take your vacation, still take your summer vacation. It doesn't have to be planned around the sports schedule. Well, if you miss a week of sports, you miss a week of sports. Families need that time together to reconnect. And, I'd argue you need that regularly. Like, sometimes the week's too crazy. Maybe you skip a practice here and there. Maybe you actually are home for dinner. We all eat dinner together, because it's like those little things that I feel are so important and can get so easily pushed to the back burner when we're in the hustle of all this.
Yeah, we need to find the appropriate rhythm in life.
Yes.
There's a family rhythm. There's an individual rhythm. There's a family rhythm. And that needs to be honored. It's critical that we honor it.
Yeah, I think there's so many tips and benefits. I'm going to link everything in the notes. I know we talked about a lot of books and a lot of things today, but I'll put them all in there because they're worth reading. Any listeners who are here today, they're definitely worth reading if you haven't already. So make sure we link that. Luis, I hope we can chat again. This was great.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode and have been inspired to slow down and start living life at your own pace. As a brand new podcast, your listener voice matters. If Let's Slow Down is resonating with you, please take a minute to leave a review and rate us. Subscribe to the show wherever you listen and share it with friends. Remember, this is a process, so go easy on yourself. Be gentle and take all the space you need to thrive, because the world needs you to be at your best, to love and serve others and yourself.